Okay, we on? All right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all across the globe, and a very warm welcome to this iText 8 release webinar. iText, extremely well known within the document processing and PDF industry, is now a part of Apprise Software Incorporated. And actually the iText PDF SDK for Java as well as .NET offers you one of the best documented and most versatile PDF engines in the world. This allows you to integrate PDF functionalities within your applications, your workflows, processes, and products. My name is Al Sterling. I'm a pre-sales manager for iText Apprise as well as a solutions engineer. And it's my fine duty today and honor to take you through this iText 8 release webinar. Let's get started. Okay, here's the agenda that we'll be following today. Brief introduction, which we've just done. We'll talk about the history of iText. We've been around for 20 plus years. We'll talk about our release cadence and the philosophy behind the frequency of our releases. We'll also talk about our two different licensing options here, both for open source as well as commercial. We'll dive into that a bit. We'll talk about the driving forces of each of our iText releases. We'll have a recap of iText 7 and its features and functionality. We'll introduce iText 8. We'll have a couple of coding examples to showcase some of the new features. And we'll round this out by some frequently asked questions and take some questions from the audience. Okay, let's get going. Okay, more than 20 years of iText. Here's a history of our iText releases. So initially, iText was simply an open source hobby project of a single developer. And it grew in popularity. It received code contributions, adding different features and capabilities. Eventually, we reached the point that we had to become a commercial enterprise, and we introduced dual licensing models, both for open source and commercial. So this introduction ensured basically a stable future for iText. So the major releases thus far have been February 2007, December 2009, version 5, and then May 2016 introduced the last version, iText version 7. So the release of iText 8 is simply yet another step along this path. It's our most significant release since 2016, and just like iText 7 before it, it adds support for new features, new specs, brings refinements and improvements to the API. A couple other items to note. iText does not often do major version releases like this. This actually has allowed us to enjoy great traction for our PDF commercial development community as well as our open source community. This particular release will be about, cementing iText as the most developer-friendly, most performant, most feature-rich PDF library, including support for PDF-A, PDF-UA, advanced digital signing. And one last thing, we were often asked, who are we targeting with this release? So the quick answer to that, we're targeting everybody. All the latest advancements in especially digital signing, we're making available to not only our commercial customers, but also open source developers in the communities, letting them embrace this advanced technology on their own as well. Okay, moving forward, let's talk briefly about software development releases and specifically their release numbers from a developer or software engineering perspective. So typically you see three numbers here, and all the way to the right, those are called patch releases, typically addressing bug fixes. Developers can easily embrace those without, worrying about, anything breaking. The middle release, while these add new functionalities, they're typically backwards compatible, meaning that you can embrace these without breaking your existing code. You can also refer to these as minor releases. And then, of course, all the way to the left, X are major releases, typically introducing incompatible changes. This is actually the semantic versioning explanation of software releases. Sometimes in these releases, you'll introduce something that's called technical debt, and we at iText strive not to harbor technical debt or maintain it where at all possible. Some of you may be unfamiliar with tech debt, but during the development process, it's essentially created due to compromises and decisions made without really knowing with certainty what the future may hold. So as new features and improvements are added to the code base, the initial architecture essentially will morph to a point where it is no longer applicable. So no development efforts are impervious to tech debt, and sooner or later, especially if it's an extremely active project, tech debt can and will accumulate naturally. So for iText, after all these years of adding new features and improvements, we've gained a valuable insight into designing our architecture to be leaner and more optimal for today's challenges and growth. So that's what we really wanted to improve upon with this latest iText 8 release. Okay, I'd now like to take this time to mention iText's 2 licensing options, one for open source and one for our commercial customers, and actually a great blend between the two. So iText 8 certainly has both options available. All the new features I'm about to show you or talk about are also included for our open source community. So open source is really part of our DNA. We launched iText in the year 2000. It still fuels our growth today. Thousands of active community partners, customers, and contributors. It's a very vibrant and engaged development community. So our open source licenses are governed by AGPL. Community support is through Stack Overflow. And of course, then we also have commercial licenses for our closed source users, basically for users who can't or unwilling to disclose their own code and IP. One other point of note here is that the commercial arm of iText allow us to continue to maintain and enhance the open source side. This brings professional quality features and enhancements to the open source community. Okay, a recent customer research survey resulted in the top reasons why customers select iText. And as you can see, it's because of its programming language capabilities, the breadth of our PDF capabilities, as well as our documentation and support. And if we talk about the breadth of PDF capabilities, 3 things stood out: digital signing, PDF manipulation, and PDF generation. These are the top things, or the most sought after identified by customers. And these are the 3 things, or the 3 themes, if you will, that drive this iText 8 release. Another result from this survey, 81% of respondents indicated that they primarily use iText for PDF creation and templating. Okay, so PDF creation and templating has been a driving force with all of the iText releases. So let's take a look at iText 7, released in 2016. This is the prior release to iText 8. So even before that, XML Worker brought the ability to convert XHTML to PDF for iText 5. So we'll talk more about that in a second. But there's always been multiple ways to create and manipulate PDFs, whether utilizing our core API or any of the add-ons to our core API. So iText 7, again, was released in 2016. It removed accumulated technical debt that we talked about earlier, and introduced even easier ways to create PDF documents, support for the PDF 2.0 spec, support for PDF UA for accessibility, advanced languages support, as well as supporting scalable images such as SVG. One additional comment here is that XML Worker has been completely redesigned, rewritten for enhanced features and performance, and is now known as our popular iText core add-on, PDF HTML. So, already being the best in class for PDF generation, what's next for iText? Well, iText 8. Let's talk about the release specifics. First of all, kind of a name change. So instead of referring to this release and subsequent ones as iText Core version X, we're just going to refer to this as iText 8. So this is now the product name. iText 8 has been optimized or refactored. Again, remember shedding the technical debt that we referred to earlier. So this was refined, this release is refined to meet the needs of modern document processing. And there's two basic main release categories for iText 8. Digital signing, as well as forms creation and manipulation. You see a common theme here. So, specifically for digital signing, PDF 2.0 basically contained extensions to the spec to support and take advantage of the latest in cryptography. So, iText 8 introduces some of these new features, specifically for SHA-3 functions, as well as digital signatures based upon elliptical curves. That's the most modern encryption technology. So iText 8 now supports this. So the Federal Information Processing Standards, otherwise known as FIPS, pretty much a set of standards that describe rules for document processing, encryption algorithms, and other information, basically for use, within non-military government agencies and agencies that deal with the government. So FIPS compliance is a big deal within the industry. So iText 8 now has direct support for the Bouncy Castle FIPS APIs for both Java and .NET. iText 8 also brings about significant improvements to our sign module, which supports new advanced features, such as the padding scheme as the preferred method for PDF electronic signatures. So these advanced, modern, state-of-the-art digital signing features are available to not only our commercial customers, but for everyone, including our open source community. Okay, so now let's get to another release specific for iText 8 as it relates to forms creation and manipulation. So the forms module has been completely rewritten, and this allows easier and more effective maintenance, feature improvements, and bug fixes. And additionally, there's a new approach now for forms creation. It can be thought of as a layered-based approach. This eliminates the need for the developer for having to think about and specify exact coordinates for form elements. We'll actually have a code sample of this in just a bit. We've also had documentation improvements specific to this new forms layout module. These have been created and are now available for Java as well as .NET within our iText GitHub repository. And this forms creation improvement represents a huge leap over previous releases. And quite frankly, it's further proof of iText's ongoing commitment of listening to our customers and improving our offerings. Oh, and this is for everyone, commercial as well as open source users. So everybody is able to embrace the new features in this release. So in summary, this iText 8 release brings about many improvements to our product offering based upon important input from our customers. Specifically, we have made significant improvements within our signing and forms creation modules, thus shedding tech debt, as we talked about earlier, basically opening up these modules for easier maintenance and improvements for our customers moving forward. We've also proved that by listening to our customers, it was top priority for our improvements for digital signing, forms creation, and specifically in digital signing as it relates to support for the FIPS RSA and SHA-3 security standards. Oh, and one final note, we now have iText 8 blogs available specifically, as you can see here, for digital extensions, as well as the new security support for digital signatures. Okay, now let's go through a couple of code examples specifically for FIPS and SHA3, followed by our filling out forms example. Oh, and just a quick note here that all of the following sample code we're about to see is available on our iText knowledge base, both in Java as well as .NET. Okay, to create FIPS compliant documents with the new iText 8 signing module, you'll have to include the Bouncy Castle FIPS dependency, which I have highlighted here. Okay, let's get into some digital signing code here. All right. So in this next step, you will need to set the approved mode to true and then add the Bouncy Castle FIPS provider as your security provider, which I've highlighted here. Also, the set approved only mode ensures that all of the operations will comply with the FIPS specification. Once that's been done, the signing process will continue per normal, as you can see here. And finally, when creating the new private key signature object, you'll notice that we have added support for the SHA3 digest algorithm as well. Please also note that this FIPS SHA3 example is available on our iText website, so you won't have to start from scratch. Okay, so our next coding example will highlight forms in iText 8. So creating form fields using acroforms is now much improved with iText 8. So rather than needing to specify the exact position of form elements, you can instead take advantage of iText's layout mechanism to add elements in a convenient as well as logical manner. So here's an example of adding a text box or a text area. All you have to do is call the setInteractive method and set it to true. It then makes this whole field interactive. Then you can just simply set layout properties to the form element. Basically, this change was made in order to optimize a developer's workflow when it comes to adding form fields to a PDF. Again, this interactive forms example is available on the iText website for your convenience. Okay, now on to our frequently asked questions. And the answer to all three of these is yes. So will customers need a new license for iText 8? They will. And if you are a customer that's up on their maintenance and support agreements, you'll be able to get this. So there is a new license required. Is the documentation up to date? As we discussed before, yes, all the documentation for all the iText 8 features that we spoke of during this webinar are available and on GitHub. And can users try out iText 8 today? Certainly, right from our website, whether you're an open source customer, someone new to iText, or a seasoned veteran from our commercial customers. iText 8 is available today, and it's freely available to try out. Okay, so what's next? So our focus will be on the add-on to iText known as PDF HTML. This is the add-on that allows you to consume HTML, CSS, and have PDFs created automatically from that. So our focus will be on making that particular add-on much better, as well as, and you have heard this theme during the webinar today, shedding more tech debt from our modules so that we can easily move into the future, taking requests from our customer base and making them real. I'd like to thank you all for your time today. Hopefully it was time well spent for everyone, and we're looking very forward and very excited and moving forward with you and your intelligent document processing initiatives. Thanks again, and now let's open up this webinar for some Q&A.